They never flaunted their wealth. They never chased attention. Yet somehow, their names still echo through time. Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Rothschild. They built empires so powerful that even after a century, their influence still shapes nations. But how did they do it? They didn't have TikTok, no flashy cars, no Silicon Valley startups. Their wealth was built on silence, secrecy, and an unspoken code. A code so mysterious that even today, billionaires follow its hidden rules, sometimes without realizing it. These aren't just lessons about money. They're blueprints of control, patience, and power. Because old money doesn't spend wealth. It builds dynasties. And if you understand their 7 secret rules, you'll see how power was designed to last forever. For the old money elite, wealth was never measured in dollars. It was measured in time. They didn't care about what they could buy today. They cared about what their great-grandchildren would control tomorrow. In 1913, when most Americans struggled to survive the Great Depression, one name kept growing: Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller didn't just build an oil empire. He built a machine of influence. His companies, his charities, his trusts. Every move he made was designed to protect wealth across generations. He once said, "The way to make money is to buy when blood is running in the streets." That wasn't greed. It was control, the art of turning chaos into opportunity. When everyone else panicked, the Rockefellers waited. They didn't react emotionally. They moved strategically. That's the first rule of old money. Control your emotions before you control your empire. While new money chases hype, old money plays decades ahead. The Vanderbilts built railroads not for fame, but for control over America's veins. The DuPonts built chemical dynasties not for luxury, but to shape industry. To them, the purpose of money wasn't comfort. It was continuity. They understood something we often forget. If your wealth depends on your presence, it's temporary. If your wealth survives your absence, it becomes legacy. And legacy is the only true currency of power. That's why these families didn't just invest in business. They invested in identity, in the family name itself. They built libraries, universities, hospitals, not for public good alone, but to immortalize their names in stone. Because when your name becomes history, your influence never dies. Every building, every trust fund, every policy written with their signatures, it all whispers the same message. Power belongs to those who think beyond their lifetime. And that's how old money made sure their voices still echo, even from the graves of their ancestors. Because rule 1 is simple. Money fades, but legacy doesn't. They never chased luxury. They built legacy. That's the second rule of old money, one that separates the temporary rich from the eternal powerful. When you look at modern billionaires, you see the flash, the jets, the yachts, the headlines. But when you look at old money, you see something colder. Their homes were massive, yes, but their walls whispered strategy, not vanity. Take the Rockefeller family. While others bought mansions to impress, they bought land to control. While others partied, they wrote laws, funded universities, and sat quietly on the boards that decided the future. They weren't showing off wealth, they were shaping generations. The Rockefellers didn't just think in years, they thought in centuries. John D. Rockefeller once said, "The man who starts out simply with the idea of getting rich won't succeed. You must have a larger ambition." That ambition wasn't money. It was control over time itself. Every move they made was a seed. Endowments, oil trusts, charities, they looked like kindness, but they were continuity. Old money didn't just leave inheritances, they left influence. Their mindset was this: luxury fades when you die, but legacy grows when you disappear. They didn't care to be remembered as rich. They wanted their decisions to live on. The schools teaching their ideals, the policies protecting their empires, the industries built on their rules. That's legacy. That's how they stayed alive, even when their portraits faded. Now, think of the DuPonts, the industrial titans who mastered chemicals, weapons, and wealth itself. They didn't just build companies. They built dynasties that could outlive war, crisis, and political chaos. When governments changed, DuPont contracts didn't. They knew how to make wealth untouchable by weaving it into the fabric of society. And here's what most people never understand. Old money didn't measure success by what they could buy, but by what they could shape. Their true currency wasn't cash, it was continuity. That's the secret code they lived by. Rule 2, legacy over luxury. Because money can make noise, but legacy makes echoes. They owned everything, yet on paper, they owned nothing. That's the third and most dangerous rule of old money. Control without ownership. To the public, they seemed simple, polite, even charitable. But behind every smile was a web, a network of trusts, corporations, and shell entities, invisible to the naked eye. They understood something most people still don't. Power isn't about what you hold. It's about what you can control without anyone knowing. Take the Mellon family. Their banks financed governments. Their companies influenced industries. Yet Andrew Mellon's name rarely appeared in the documents that mattered. He knew how to hide in plain sight. Every company he controlled was owned by another company, owned by another trust, buried under layers of legality so deep it would take a lifetime to trace. That's not secrecy. That's architecture. You see, old money families didn't just study finance. They studied law. They learned how to build invisible empires, untouchable by taxes, scandals, or revolutions. They made sure if the castle burned, their gold would be waiting in another country. Their fingerprints were everywhere, but their names were nowhere. And while the new rich bought mansions in their own names, old money bought power through others. Politicians, lawyers, bankers, even the media, each was a piece on their chessboard. They never fought for control, they placed it. Because here's the brutal truth. If the world knows what you own, they can take it. If no one does, they can't even touch you. That's why families like the Rothschilds moved like shadows. They didn't flaunt fortune. They distributed it across continents in names that didn't exist. Banks, art, land, all managed through trust that outlived their creators. They didn't need fame because fame invites danger. They wanted permanence. And you'll notice something strange. No matter how many market crashes, political shifts, or revolutions occurred, old money survived. They always did. Because while others owned things, old money owned systems. They learned that true wealth doesn't sit in vaults. It moves in silence. It's invisible. It's protected by confusion. That's not greed. That's genius. Rule 3, control without ownership. Because when no one can see your hand, you never lose the game. Old money doesn't speak. It whispers. Because the louder someone talks about power, the less of it they actually have. Silence. That's the fourth rule. The weapon of choice for the world's quietest empires. You never saw the Rockefellers arguing on camera. You never saw the Vanderbilts giving motivational speeches. And yet, their influence shaped nations. Their words could move markets. Whispered in rooms you and I will never enter. They understood something the new rich still don't. You don't gain power by announcing it. You gain power by being the only one who knows what's coming next. The loud man in the room wants attention. The silent man in the corner? He's taking notes. And when the lights go off, he's the one who decides what happens next. Old money learned early. Reputation is built in silence and destroyed in noise. While everyone else fought for headlines, they built alliances in the dark. They moved quietly, investing in industries before the world even knew they existed. Oil, railroads, media, banking. Not through luck, but through information traded in whispers. It wasn't conspiracy. It was discipline. When others shouted, they listened. When others chased fame, they chased influence. Because power that isn't seen can never be attacked. In the 1960s, when new millionaires were buying yachts and throwing parties, the old families were sending their heirs to Europe to study history, politics, and philosophy. They didn't teach their children how to earn money. They taught them how to control it, how to move through the world without making ripples, how to wear silence like armor. And that's the real secret. You don't need to prove you're powerful when everyone already knows you could destroy them with one decision. Silence isn't weakness. It's signal control. It's what separates legacy from noise. Look closely at any billionaire family, still standing after a century. You won't find their social media accounts or public fights. You'll find a trail of quiet influence, donations, foundations, hidden boards. Power that moves nations but never posts selfies. Because once people can predict you, they can play you. But if you live in silence, no one ever knows your next move. And that's the game old money mastered. It didn't need spotlights. They were the light behind the curtain. Rule 4, power in silence. Because the world can't destroy what it can't see. You ever notice something strange? The richest people, the real rich, never look rich. They don't flash gold watches or private jets on Instagram. Because Rule 5 is the illusion of modesty. Old money understood. The more invisible you are, the freer you become. They drove old cars, wore simple suits, lived in quiet neighborhoods with iron gates and no doorbell. Because they never needed to prove their worth to the world. They already own half of it. While new money fights for validation, old money hides in plain sight. Watching, observing, owning. In the 1950s, the DuPonts built industries while pretending to live ordinary lives. The Rockefellers funded science, universities, and global charities, not to brag, but to steer the future from the shadows. That's how they stayed untouchable. You can't attack what you can't see. You can't envy what you don't notice. Modesty became their invisibility cloak, a mask that protected the family name, while their wealth worked silently behind closed doors. Because the truly powerful don't need to remind you who they are. They make decisions that remind history. It might sound cold, but for centuries, love wasn't the foundation of old money marriages. Strategy was. Every wedding was a merger. Every union, a contract between dynasties. The Mellons and Carnegies, the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, even European royal families. They didn't just marry people. They married empires. Because old money knew something modern minds forgot. Romance fades, but power compounds. Each marriage tightened control over banks, oil, land, or politics. And generation after generation, these connections built an invisible web across continents. A single wedding could mean access to a new market. A single alliance could stop a war before it began. It wasn't love stories that built these families. It was chess moves played with human hearts. Harsh, maybe, but that's how empires survive. Emotion was secondary to the one thing they valued above all, legacy. Even today, you'll see echoes of it. Tech founders marrying into investment families. Billionaires partnering with political heirs. The game never stopped. It just changed clothes. Rule 6, marry strategy, not romance. Because love ends where legacy begins. This is the final rule, and maybe the most chilling of them all. Old money didn't want fame. They wanted control. You saw the politicians. You saw the CEOs. But behind them, there was always a family name you never heard. That's the real secret. Never stand in front of the camera when you can own the studio. The Morgans didn't run for president. They funded presidents. The Rockefellers didn't chase publicity. They built the universities that shaped generations of leaders. They didn't seek applause. They wrote the script. Every visible face was replaceable. But the power behind it, the hand that fed, financed, and guided, was eternal. That's why their influence never faded. Because fame dies. Fortune fades. But control becomes legacy. When the spotlight burns out, the real power remains in the shadows, writing the next act. And that's what old money mastered, the art of unseen dominance. Rule 7, never be the face, be the power behind it. Because the face disappears, but the hand behind it never does. The world looks at wealth and sees numbers. But old money saw systems. They played a longer game, built slower, thought deeper. They didn't chase trends. They created the rules everyone else followed. While the new rich show off their cars and mansions, old money still moves silently through foundations, charities, and trusts, owning what we see, influencing what we think. Because real power was never about the money. It was about time, about patience, about control without exposure. And that's the greatest secret of all. Subscribe to our channel 0 to Founder.